This video is brought to you by AKSIAS.
Let us discuss Economy Weekly Roundup for the current week. And the first topic under Economy Weekly Roundup is Special Liquidity Scheme for Non-Banking Finance Companies and Housing Finance Companies. Housing finance companies are also a type of non-banking finance companies, and according to the definition given by Reserve Bank of India, a housing finance company is that NBFC, that means is that non-banking finance company which is having at least 50% of assets under housing loans, out of which 75% are given to individuals. That means individual home buyers should constitute 75% of the 50% of loans given against purchasing of house. So this is the definition given by Reserve Bank of India. Now, why does this scheme initiated now? In a budget speech of the financial year 2020-21, there was a special mention on devising a mechanism to provide liquidity to non-banking finance companies. Why? Because at that time, non-banking finance companies are running out of liquidity to run their operations. Now, what was this scheme is all about? To provide additional liquidity facility. By the way, what are the sources of funds for NBFCs, HFCs, etc.? Two. One is they borrow from banks and they borrow from mutual funds from the market. And they rely more on short-term lending. That means they borrow for short time period from banks and mutual funds by selling commercial papers and non-convertible debentures. So this is how they get funding. So in addition to that, now because of this scheme, the government want to increase additional liquidity facility. How does additional liquidity facility is provided to NBFCs? Government will create a special purpose vehicle, and this special purpose vehicle will issue securities. Try to understand. Here it is SPV, special purpose vehicle. It is issuing securities to Reserve Bank of India. That means securities are given by special purpose vehicle to Reserve Bank of India, but these securities are guaranteed by central government. Because central government is providing guarantee to the securities issued by special purpose vehicle, Reserve Bank of India is purchasing them. What happens out of the sales of the proceeds of these securities? After selling securities guaranteed by government to the Reserve Bank of India, the proceeds of the sale of securities is used by the special purpose vehicle to acquire short-term debt. What is the short-term debt? Towards banks and mutual funds. So, because of the proceeds out of the sale of securities, special purpose vehicle will acquire short-term debt of NBFCs and HFCs from banks and mutual funds. So this is how they are provided additional liquidity facility. Now, what are the eligibility criteria for housing finance companies and non-banking finance companies to qualify to use the benefits under a special liquidity scheme for? Here is the criteria. They should not, that means these NBFCs or HFCs should not have net NPAs for more than 6% as on March 31st, 2019. That means in 2018-19 financial year, these identified HFCs should not have NPAs more than 6%. That means any NBFC with equal to or less than 6% NBFC, non-performing assets, is qualified to get access to this additional liquidity facility. Now, second condition, should have made net profit should have made net profit in at least one of the last two preceding financial years, 17-18 or 18-19. Among these two financial years, at least in one financial year, the identified non-banking finance companies must have witnessed profits. Second criteria. First one is NPAs should not be more than 6%. Second one is at least in the identified time period, in one financial year, they must have profits. Third criteria. Should not have been reported under special mention accounts 1 or special mention accounts 2. What do you mean by special mention accounts A, 1 or 2? Special mention accounts are nothing but banks classify their borrowers. Whenever we take loan from the banks, they classify us. Banks classifies borrowers into special mention accounts. This is referred as SMA. Okay, now SMA 0 means a loan which is not repaid between 0 to 30 days. A loan which is not repaid, that means the installment which is not repaid in 0 to 30 days. SMA 1 means any loan which is not repaid between 31 to 60 days. SMA 2, 61 to 90 days. So these are the three categories made by banks towards their borrowers if they default on their loan payment, repayment. What happens if the loan is not paid or not repaid beyond 91 days? After 91 days, it is called non-performing asset. This is the criteria, NPA. So the conditions are, these identified NBFCs should not have been reported under special mention accounts 1 or special mention accounts 2 by any bank for their borrowings during the last 1 year prior to August 2018. So these are three conditions. If any NBFC and HFC fulfill these three criteria, it will get access to additional liquidity facility. Now what are the advantages? First one, whenever non-banking finance companies or housing finance companies, they get access to additional facility, it will add more liquidity for them to conduct their regular business or operations. The first benefit is they do not have to liquidate their current asset portfolio. What is an asset? Any loan given by a bank or a financial institution to a borrower is called asset. So if this scheme is absent, they have to restructure their current asset portfolio. Why? To have enough liquidity to continue their operations. But because of additional liquidity provided by this facility, now they need not liquidate or restructure their current asset portfolio. First advantage. Second one, this additional liquidity facility enables non-banking finance companies to get investment grade for bonds issued by them. NBFCs issue bonds which are purchased by banks, etc. So what do you mean by investment grade? If any bonds get investment grade, their value in the market increases. So that is the second advantage. Third advantage, it augments or it increases the lending resources of NBFCs. What are lending resources? Lending resources are nothing but existing liquidity facility. So because of infusion of additional liquidity facility, NBFCs will have more resources to lend. Okay, so this is all about special liquidity scheme for NBFCs. Now, what is the financial implication on central government because of this scheme? The guarantee ceiling limit was 30,000 crore. But initial contribution of central government towards a special purpose vehicle was 5 crore. So, as long as NBFCs recover well, this will not be invoked. This guarantee ceiling will not be invoked. Why guarantee ceiling? Because central government has given guarantee. Reserve Bank of India purchased securities from special purpose vehicle. So if this guarantee ceiling is invoked, then central government's financial liability would be, or implications would be 30,000 crore. That means if every step taken by this special purpose vehicle to purchase short-term debts from NBFCs, HFCs, they went wrong, they are not repaid, then the government will have to face 30,000 crore of financial implication. This will not happen in any way. Okay, so this is about financial implication. Now, what is an NBFC? It is registered as a company under Companies Act 1956. It cannot take deposits, it cannot issue checks drawn upon itself, it is not part of payment and settlement system, it do not get a deposit insurance under deposit insurance credit guarantee scheme. So these are the differences between a regular bank and non-banking finance companies. Okay, so this is about a special liquidity scheme for NBFCs and HFCs. The next topic is Animal Husbandry Infrastructure Development Fund, and the fund constitutes around 15,000 crore. What was the objective of this fund? It was to incentivize infrastructure investments in dairy, meat production and animal feed plants. Why this fund is spent towards dairy, meat processing and animal feed plants? One, to augment farmers' income and to augment exports of such products to other countries. Now look into the details. Who are eligible to access this fund? The eligibility criteria is farmer producer organizations, micro, small, medium enterprises, private companies and individual entrepreneurs are available to get access to this Animal Husbandry Infrastructure Development Fund. So this is about eligibility criteria. Now what happens? These people will get loan out of this 15,000 crore, and there was an interesting point here. All these individual entrepreneurs, private companies, farmer producer organizations or micro, small, medium enterprises, if they repay loan on time, prompt repayment, there is an additional benefit of 3% interest subvention to eligible beneficiaries. So whenever a beneficiary repays his loans on time, there is added benefit of 3% interest subvention scheme. What do you mean by 3% interest subvention? For that matter, what is meant by interest subvention? Say for example, the loan is 6% interest. If I repay on time, I have to pay only 3% interest. Why? Remaining 3% is covered under 3% interest subvention. This is nothing but a subsidy or a beneficiary. Next criteria, 2 years moratorium period. That means 2 years you don't have to pay anything. 2 years moratorium period for repayment of loans. So today you have taken loan, from now onwards for 2 years you don't have to repay the installment. Then with 6 years repayment period thereafter. So whatever loan you have taken now, technically after 8 years you have to repay the entire loan amount. Why? For the next 2 years, this is 2020, for 21 and 22 you don't have to repay. Why? There is a 2 years moratorium. This time is provided as a shock absorber or a cushion to the eligible beneficiaries to make themselves empowered and to gain profits, and then they have to repay the loans. So this will provide huge relief for these borrowers. Next one, Credit Guarantee Fund. Under this 750 crore rupees was assigned, and this is managed by National Bank for Agriculture and Rural Development, that is NABARD. And what are the projects covered? This fund is used to the projects covered under micro, small, medium enterprises defined ceilings. Next criteria, the guarantee coverage will be up to 25% of the credit facility of the borrower. That means only 25% of the credit facility of the borrower is covered under this scheme. Next point, what are the advantages of this scheme? This was part of a huge package announced during lockdown by Ministry of Finance. What was that package? Atmanirbhar Bharat. So this Animal Husbandry Infrastructure Development Fund is part of this 15,000 crore is part of the 20 lakh crore package announced during Atmanirbhar Bharat. Now, what are the advantages? First one is ensures availability of capital to meet upfront investment. So it is like working capital for an entrepreneur. That is the first advantage. Second one, it helps enhance overall returns for investors, and it will also increase farmers' income, and it will also promote exports from this sector. So these are 4 advantages because of this scheme. Next topic is consolidated notification of micro, small, medium enterprises classification and registration. Recently there was changes incorporated in the way micro, small, medium enterprises are classified and how they are registered. Now onwards, micro, small, medium enterprises would be referred as Udyam, and the registration is called Udyam registration. And the facility now is registration can be filed online based on self-declaration. This is very important. Why? Because here onwards, there is no need to produce certificates as a proof while registering as MSME. This is purely based on self-declaration, and the registration process is done through online. Now, the basic criteria for classification of MSMEs, this is very, very important for prelims. What is the basis for classification of MSMEs? Is it the investment? Is it the turnover? Is it the employability? Is it the productivity? Let us look into it. Investment in plant, machinery and equipment. This is the first criteria. Investment in plant, machinery and equipment. This is the first criteria. And the second criteria is turnover. Only 2 criteria upon which micro, small, medium enterprises are classified here onwards. Next one, export of goods or services or both. That means if a micro, small, medium enterprise is involved in export of both goods and services, that will be excluded in calculating turnover. Say for example, XYZ is a micro, small, medium enterprise and its turnover is 10 crore annually, and because of export of goods and services, that value is 5 crore. So the 5 crore will be deducted from 10 crore while calculating the turnover of a particular MSME called XYZ. That means it is providing enough leverage or space for MSMEs to stay in the identified category. Even if they are doing very well in exports, that is not calculated to enable them retain the benefits they get because of staying in that particular classification. Now, and investment calculation linked to IT returns of previous year, this is also not included while calculating the investment criteria. Now, who will assist MSME registration across the country? There was a champions control room across the country to enable entrepreneurs register online. Now, what is the criteria? Micro, small, medium enterprises are classified based on the criteria in 2 parameters. One is investment, the other one is turnover. For a micro, small, medium enterprise unit, that means for an unit to be classified as a micro unit, its investment should not be more than 1 crore. That means it must be equal to or less than 1 crore for investment, and turnover should be around 5 crore, not more than 5 crore. Then you come to small enterprise. Investment should be less than 10 crore and turnover should be equal to or less than 50 crore. Then for medium enterprise, investment is 50 crore and turnover is 250 crore. So this is the criteria adopted from here onwards. This may be useful for prelims. Now, what is the contribution of micro, small, medium enterprises in Indian economy? This is very important. Almost 63.4 million units are functioning in India today. Among MSMEs, there are somewhere around 63.4 million units functioning in India. And they offer employment to 120 million people. That means 12 crore. 12 crore people in India are employed in micro, small, medium enterprises. And micro, small, medium enterprises, they contribute 45% of exports to other countries from India. That means their export contribution is 45%. And 6.1% of manufacturing GDP is coming from micro, small, medium enterprises. 6.1% manufacturing GDP. And in total manufacturing output, 33.4% is contributed by MSMEs in total manufacturing output in India. So this is the contribution of micro, small, medium enterprises and the recently changed criteria and classification. Next topic is core sector shrinks by or contracts by 23.4% in May. What do you mean by contraction? That means witnessing negative growth territory. What are identified as a core sector in Indian economy? There are 8 sectors which are classified as core sectors. What are they? One is coal, cement, crude oil, refinery products, natural gas, fertilizer, steel and electricity. Among all these things, cement has got lowest weightage and refinery products has got highest weightage. These are useful for prelims. These facts are useful. Now, in April, these 8 core sectors, they contracted by 37%, and in May, slowly, the revival started, slowly. And which was that core sector which has witnessed revival? That is, for fertilizer sector witnessed revival, and the remaining 7 sectors recorded negative growth in May also. So, the contraction has reduced from April to May because of improvement witnessed in one core sector, that is fertilizer. So, except fertilizer, all other 7 sectors recorded negative growth in May. Highest sector which witnessed negative growth in May was steel, minus 48.9%, and cement minus 22.2%. Why? Cement and steel are used heavily in construction activity, and construction activity involves working of human force together. And during lockdown, there was a principle called social distancing. Hence, construction activities came to a halt, and that led to decline or negative growth in steel and cement core sectors. Then comes factories remained. Because why this negative growth was witnessed? Because factories remained affected by lockdown, and that led to what? Lack of labor and cash shortage. Lack of cash and lack of labor. Then 8 core industries or core sectors, they comprises around 40.27% of weightage in Index of Industrial Production. IIP stands for Index of Industrial Production, which is using 2011-12 as a base year. And this IIP is very, very crucial for policy making and in calculation of advanced and quarterly gross domestic product growth rates. To calculate GDP growth rates, this IIP is very, very important. And this is IIP reports are published every month by Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. Now, IIP measures growth rate of industries classified under 2 categories. What was the first category? Broad sectors. These broad sectors comprises of mining, manufacturing and electricity. The second category, use-based sectors. Use-based sectors is nothing but basic goods, capital goods and intermediate goods. So this is about why core sector has contracted by 23.4% in May. The next topic is cooperative banks under RBI supervision. Recently, central government has brought in an ordinance. Why ordinance? Because the parliament is not in session. So whenever parliament is not in session, central government, if it want to initiate any important changes in any of the policies, it will bring in ordinance. So through that ordinance, it has brought urban cooperative banks under the fold of Reserve Bank of India for supervision. How does urban cooperative banks function today? Urban cooperative banks are part of cooperative banking structure in India, whose motive is service to the society. Urban cooperative banks will have members as the customers and owners. That means it will have a democratic setup wherein the bank board directors will be elected among the shareholders. Generally, in any bank or company, shareholders will not be elected to board of directors. But this is a unique setup in urban cooperative banks wherein shareholders among themselves will choose board of directors. So because of this, there are a lot of financial irregularities and scams happened. The latest scam was Punjab and Maharashtra cooperative bank scam in 2019. So because of all these things, the government want to bring in urban cooperative banks under the fold of Reserve Bank of India for proper regulation, supervision and monitoring. Now, several instances of fraud has happened. So this is the need for this ordinance issued by the central government. Then till date, cooperative banks are under dual regulation. What do you mean by dual regulation? For banking purposes, they are regulated by Reserve Bank of India, like the requirement of cash reserve ratio, the requirement of capital adequacy ratio. For such kind of things, they come under Reserve Bank of India even before this ordinance was made. What about non-banking supervision like management, administration, amalgamation, branch expansion, etc.? For all these things, liquidity, for all these things, they are under the control of Registrar of Cooperative Societies. They are under the control or supervision of Registrar of Cooperative Societies of the state. And these urban cooperative banks, UCBs, urban cooperative banks, they are classified into two: single state, multi-state. What do you mean by single state urban cooperative bank? That means that urban cooperative bank which was registered under Cooperative Societies Act of a particular state government and which is regulated by Registrar of Cooperative Societies of that state. Multi-state urban cooperative banks are those cooperative banks which are registered under Multi-State Cooperative Societies Act and which are regulated by Central Register of Cooperative Societies. So such kind of UCBs are regulated by Central Register. Single state are regulated by Register of Cooperative Societies of the concerned state government. So this is called dual control, wherein for banking activities RBI supervises, for non-banking activities Register of Cooperative Societies. Now this dual regulation was gone. Why? Supreme Court, in hearing a case, has given a judgment that urban cooperative banks will come under bank category as far as SARFAESI Act is concerned. What is the SARFAESI Act? It is a policy tool to address increasing non-performing assets. So, Supreme Court has also said that urban cooperative banks, technically, they fall under bank category. Now, what is the advantage of urban cooperative banks if they come under the supervision of Reserve Bank of India as a whole? First advantage is this will empower Reserve Bank of India to regulate along with banking activities, non-banking activities of urban cooperative banks. This is very, very important. Why? Whenever urban cooperative bank witnesses surplus profits, huge profits, how those profits are managed is not under the purview of Reserve Bank of India till date. That is the reason and that is the scope for huge scams. You know why? People invest hugely in urban cooperative banks. If I give you the figures, you'll be surprised. More than 4.8 lakh crore funds were lying in urban cooperative banks in India across the country. 4.8 lakh crore, imagine. More than 8 crore people have deposited their money. So, what is the first advantage? It will empower Reserve Bank of India to regulate all urban and multi-state cooperative banks on the lines of commercial banks. So, every banking activity, non-banking activity is now under the supervision of RBI. Then, provides more security to depositors. Why? Because around 8.6 crore depositors have deposited 4.84 lakh crore rupees in urban cooperative banks. So from here onwards, these urban cooperative banks are under supervision of RBI. Try to remember, in prelims, statements may be twisted. Like both urban cooperative banks and rural cooperative banks are now under the supervision of Reserve Bank of India. True or false? False. Why? Only urban cooperative banks were completely under the supervision of RBI, not rural cooperative banks. Okay. Privatization of railways topic is important both for prelims and mains. Now, why this proposal? Ministry of Railways has initiated a first step in attracting private players, allow them to operate in passenger train segment in Indian Railways. So, as a first step, it has invited request for qualification. Request for qualification. Why this request for qualification? It was to ask private players to provide their qualifications to enable them take part in operation of passenger trains in India. So what happens because of privatization of railways? For example, the advantages. The advantages is 151 modern trains will be introduced. When I say modern trains, there is a difference between the present trains and coaches that are operating today and the modern coaches and trains initiated under this privatization of railways. I'll give an example. Today, a normal coach which is operated by Indian Railways, if it runs for 4,000 kilometers, it has to go for maintenance. That means for every 4,000 kilometers, it must go to maintenance. For modern trains under modern coaches, modern trains which are equipped with modern coaches, they need maintenance for every 40,000 kilometers. This is the advantage. That means maintenance cost will come down. That means operational cost will come down. And they offer better safety procedures and they offer better facilities for the passengers who travel through modern trains. Now come back. 151 modern trains will be introduced and 109 pairs of routes will be planned out for private operations of passenger trains. First important point. Second one, the fares, that means tariffs, ticket tariffs or fares in these private trains will be competitive. That means they have to keep in mind the fares of other modes of transportation like bus transportation and air fare. So keeping those things in mind, private players has to come to an appropriate fares. Next one, private participation in passenger trains will only be 5%. Most of the people have this apprehension of once a privatization is introduced in railways, will the entire railways operations in passenger trains will be privatized? No. The government of India, that means Railway Ministry, says that only 5% of passenger trains will be operated by private players. The remaining 95% of passenger trains will be with the Ministry of Railways. So no worries at this point of time. And it will only have, because of this initiative, this will pump in 30,000 crore of private sector investment into the railways, which is very, very necessary. Why? Today, the operational cost of railways is around 98.7. What do you mean by 98.7 operational cost? That means if railways are earning 100 rupees, 98.7 rupees is going through expenditures. What is left for investment in improving the infrastructure? Just 1.3 rupees. So this is a very pathetic condition. That is why Ministry of Railways want to have enough surplus investment into the ministry, into the railways. That is why they are encouraging private sector participation through request for qualification process initiated. What are the advantages? Before looking into the advantages of private sector entry into passenger trains operation, let us understand why do we need private participation in railways, particularly in passenger trains operation. First reason, to develop railways infrastructure and provide travel services to all its passengers. I'll give an example here. This phrase is amusing. Provide travel services to all its passengers. That means what is happening to passengers when all the passenger trains are operated by railways? Last year, that means in 2019-20, 840 crore passengers traveled through railways. This is amusing. 8.4 billion passengers traveled through railways. Or let us put it this way. Railways ferried 840 crore people in 2019-20, and 5 crore people have cancelled their reservation tickets. You know why? Because they did not get confirmation tickets. So 5 crore people did not get access to travel through railways. So because of private participation, these 5 crores will also be able to travel through railways through confirmation tickets. That is one advantage. That is the inherent philosophy in this phrase, like providing travel services to all its passengers. During peak season, during summer season, festival season, summer holiday season, that is called peak season, 13.3% of passengers are not able to get confirmation tickets, reservation tickets. So this is the situation, and existing Ministry of Railways is unable to cater to the needs of these 13.3% of passengers during peak season. So imagine a condition wherein there is an alternative trains provided or run by private operators. Private operators will bring in modern technology, better safety standards, better facilities, and faster transit time and travel time. So because of introduction of private operators in passenger trains, those people, that means this 13.3% of population who want to travel by trains and who are unable to get reserved tickets, from now onwards, if private entry is made possible, they can get access to confirmed tickets in railways. That is the advantage. Now, introduction of modern technology and reduction in transit time and demand supply deficit in train tickets. First one is, this is common everywhere. With private introduction, new technologies will come into any sector, be it railways, airways, whatever it is. First advantage. Second one, reduction in transit time. Most of the times, in general, Indian railways do not follow punctuality. Most of you might have traveled through trains. How many times has your train reached destination on time? Most of the times it will not. Reasons are plenty, let us not discuss those things. And demand supply deficit in train tickets. Demand of train tickets is so high. What was the deficit? 13.3% during peak season. 5 crore people in 2019-20 have cancelled their reservation tickets. Why? Because they did not get confirmed tickets. So this is also addressed by private participation. So let us look into the advantages or benefits because of privatization of railways. What is the first advantage? Generally, any advantage because of private entry is confirmed tickets. Just now I told you that 5 crore tickets were cancelled last year. So that would be addressed. Confirmed tickets, faster trains, that means travel time will be reduced with better facilities in coaches and better safety standards followed by private operators. Second advantage, reduction in maintenance cost of train coaches. Just now I have explained the difference between modern coaches and the existing coaches operated by Indian Railways. What was the difference? For every 4,000 kilometers, the present day coaches need maintenance. But if you introduce modern coaches, for every 40,000 kilometers run, they need maintenance. That means maintenance cost will come down. Then loss of railways will be addressed. Reduction in railway loss. Currently, railways are witnessing losses as far as operation of passenger trains are concerned. So that will be addressed. Then provide revenue to railways in future. How does this provide revenue to the railways? One, private operators pay fixed haulage charges. Fixed haulage charges, they pay energy charges, and they provide share in gross revenue. All these things are agreed through bidding process. What do you mean by fixed haulage charges? Haulage is nothing but charges levied due to transportation of goods through rail network. That means whatever goods are transported, which are levied by railways, that is called fixed haulage charges. And then energy charges. Private operators has to consume energy to operate trains. Then gross revenue is shared with railways by the private operators. So by these three things, provide revenue to railways will become a reality. Railways will get a source of revenue. Then request for qualification has been issued under Make in India. What is the advantage of Make in India program? I said private operators will introduce modern trains with modern coaches, and this request for qualification was issued under Make in India. That means the construction of new coaches should be carried in India. So manufacturing of modern trains will happen in India under Make in India program. What is the advantage of this? Lot of youth will get employment opportunities. This will further increase employment. So this is the advantage of privatization of railways.
This video is brought to you by AKSIAS.